If you're looking for pound the best home health and beauty fragrance products, you need to go to ashkickin.com.
Hi, I'm Angie and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So today, one of the biggest boxing websites in the sport of boxing, at least in the United States, boxingscene.com, they wrote an article today where they compared Gennady Golovkin to LeBron James. And the writer, he titled the article, "What's Left for Gennady Golovkin to Prove?" Now, in this article, the writer, he compares Gennady Golovkin to LeBron James. He's pretty much saying that Golovkin is the LeBron James of boxing, at least in the middleweight division. Now, I'm not going to read the entire analogy that he made when it came to the comparison, but I'll put the link in the description box, and I'll pretty much surmise what he said. The writer, he said that even though Golovkin is starting to slip a little bit in age when he was comparing him to LeBron James, he said Golovkin was still able to do something to Vanes Martirosyan that Charlo couldn't do, Demetrius Andrade couldn't do, and everyone else, Erislandy Lara, they could not do. The writer said it did not take 48 minutes for Golovkin to beat Vanes Martirosyan. It only took, less than 2 rounds. And then he says, which I thought was pretty interesting, despite the fact that Vanes Martirosyan wasn't even a middleweight. The writer still compares Golovkin to a LeBron James fighting Vanes Martirosyan, knocking out Vanes Martirosyan. He compares him to LeBron James. Then he goes even further and he says there's nothing else for him to prove. He said even if he gets beat by someone from this point on, it will mainly be because he's slipping in age, because he's older, and it won't be so much because that fighter is better than him. Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and dive right into this. This is what you call having great hope insurance. That's right. When you are on that hope list and you have hope insurance, it will cover anything, right? They are already giving this man a built-in excuse just in case he does have to fight the likes of his number one contenders like Sergey Derevyanchenko, Jamal Charlo, Danny Jacobs in a rematch. According to this writer, Golovkin's hope insurance will cover if he loses to them. It will be as if the loss never even took place. Why? Because this writer says he already has a built-in, oh, I'm 36 years old excuse. So it's not going to count as Golovkin not being as good as people thought he was, right? But in the same breath, the writer is giving Golovkin credit for destroying Vanes Martirosyan better than Charlo, Erislandy Lara, and Andrade did. Man, there are so many talking points to attack in this article that I'll probably be here all day tackling one sentence at a time. Because I just thought about this point right now as I was thinking about the writer's last quote. He's giving Golovkin credit for destroying an opponent that other fighters did not destroy the way Golovkin did, right? Now forget about the fact that when Demetrius Andrade fought him, he was undefeated and he was top 3 ranked in the division. When Lara and Charlo fought Vanes, he was ranked, but most importantly, he was fighting in the same division and he was active. Unlike when he just fought against Golovkin. Vanes Martirosyan was off for 2 years and he was coming off of a loss when he fought against Gennady Golovkin. But that's just a precursor to the point that I wanted to make, the facts I wanted to point out. The writer, he gives credit to Gennady Golovkin for knocking out Vanes Martirosyan, something that Andre, Charlo, and Lara did not do. But in the same breath, he says Golovkin doesn't really have to fight these names that he mentions, Lara, Charlo, and Andre. He said he really doesn't have to fight them because he has nothing to prove. So you give Golovkin credit for beating an opponent that these guys have already beat in their natural weight class, but then you defend Golovkin by saying he doesn't have to fight those guys who are actually ranked, who are actually extremely significant and relevant in the sport right now in the middleweight division. He doesn't have to fight them, but he gets more credit than them for beating Vanes Martirosyan after those guys had already did it. Once again, when Andre beat Vanes Martirosyan, Vanes was undefeated and he was top 3 ranked in the division. So you guys can understand the equivalence. That would be pretty much like Golovkin fighting his number 1 contender, undefeated Jermall Charlo right now. That's pretty similar to what Andre did when he fought against Vanes Martirosyan. Now let's talk about this comparison to LeBron James. Now it's interesting he would use an analogy like this because I always use a football NBA analogy when it comes to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, etc., etc., etc. Now what's so crazy about him making this comparison is in the NBA, LeBron James is forced to face the best teams every single season. And the more you win, the more you advance. You advance from the regular season to the playoffs, and then you go to the finals, and then you try to win the entire finals, then you win the championship, right? So what Golovkin did essentially in this situation with Vanes Martirosyan is, you got to remember, Sergey Derenyevchenko, that was a playoff type of opponent. Vanes Martirosyan is not a playoff opponent. So what Golovkin did was he elected to not go to the playoffs because he understood advancing to the playoffs, that would mean tougher competition. And he was not sure if he could win on that level of competition. Once again, LeBron James, on the other hand, and his team, they were forced to face the Jermall Charlos, the Andrades, the Sergey Derenyevchenkos. Every single season, they had to go against these teams. So you cannot compare what Golovkin is attempting to do to what LeBron James has already accomplished in his career. It's not even apples and oranges, it's apples and rocks. Gennady Golovkin had many options to advance to the playoffs, go to the Super Bowl, the finals. Even before the 160-pound division became flooded with stiff competition like Charlo, Andrade, Sergey, Danny Jacobs, etc., etc., etc. Even before that, you had Andre Ward at 168 who was aggressively calling out Gennady Golovkin. Understand this, guys. Usually, fighters that have confidence in themselves and they believe that they truly are the best, they usually go after the best fighter in the world. That's usually who they aspire to fight against. Remember, guys, Shane Mosley moved up 2 weight classes to fight Oscar De La Hoya, who at the time was top 3 pound for pound. Okay? Roberto Duran moved up 2 weight classes to fight Sugar Ray Leonard. Floyd Mayweather moved up 5 weight classes. Manny Pacquiao moved up 8 weight classes. Andre Ward, he moved up an additional weight class to fight Kovalev not once, but twice. Gennady Golovkin has never moved up in weight, and he himself said that he'll fight anyone from 154 to 168. So now you have pound for pound the best fighter in the world, once Floyd Mayweather retired, Andre Ward, calling you out. Why would you not want to advance to the finals, the Super Bowl, as LeBron James has done many of times in his career? Why would you turn down the finals if you are seeking greatness? Imagine if one of your favorite teams, they advance to the playoffs and then they announce to the public that they've decided not to play against any other teams in the playoffs. Matter of fact, they rather play against other teams that didn't even make it to the playoffs, that lost to all the other playoff teams. That's what Gennady Golovkin did when he fought against Vanes Martirosyan. Instead of playing against the other teams that also advanced to the playoffs, like Charlo, Jacobs, Darren Yevchenko, Andrade, Golovkin, he wanted to play against a team that didn't make it to the playoffs, that was beat by the other playoff teams. I told you guys this plenty of times. In every other sport, your dream is to see your favorite team, your favorite player advance, right? Advance to the playoffs, advance to the finals, and win the whole thing. That is always your dream when you are following a team or a player. Only in boxing do fans encourage, and this only happens to fighters on the hope list. This only happens with fighters on the hope list. Only in the sport of boxing do fans encourage their favorite fighters on the hope list, and reporters as well. They encourage them to not advance to the playoffs, to not advance to the Super Bowl, not advance to the finals. They will tell their favorite team, we are okay with you not winning or not even attempting to play in the Super Bowl or the finals. Because when it comes to boxing, things are far more personal. Things are far more personal. It's more about pride, race, nationality, etc., etc. When it comes to football, when it comes to basketball, a lot of people that watch, especially people that aren't black, even if you are black, it doesn't matter because the majority of people are the same race. So it's not so personal, right? In basketball, what is it, 80, 90% black? Football, what is it, 65, 70% black, right? It doesn't really matter, especially when you have, people that come from different countries, from Mexico, from the Philippines, from wherever, right? Since America is a melting pot, you have fans of all different cultures and nationalities. So of course, when you have someone from the Philippines who has a favorite basketball team, obviously he's not going to be as emotionally invested into that team as he would be if he was rooting for Manny Pacquiao, or if he was just rooting against a black team, which a lot of fans do. But you can't really do that in basketball because they're all black. So in boxing, you can root against the black fighter regardless if the fighter who wins is sharing the same race as you. So yeah, man, once again, only in the sport of boxing do fans encourage their favorite fighters to not step up in competition. Don't go to the playoffs. Because losing in boxing is a lot different than losing in basketball. More pride is involved. Now, once again, this writer, he was trying to give credit to Golovkin for beating an opponent that Charlo, Andrade, and Lara fought. But he was giving more credit to Golovkin because Golovkin, he knocked the man out. Let me go ahead and paint a perfect picture so you guys can see it clearly, so you guys can understand what this man just said, the person who wrote this article, what he said by defending Golovkin for knocking out Vanes Martirosyan and winning in a more impressive fashion than other fighters. Okay, let's use Oscar Larios as an example. Oscar Larios is an opponent that Manny Pacquiao went 12 rounds with back in 2006. Now, let's just say hypothetically, other fighters as well. They fought Oscar Larios. Let's just say Juan Manuel Marquez he fought Larios, went 12 rounds with him. Let's say Canelo Alvarez. We're just throwing some additional names. Canelo went 12 rounds with Oscar Larios. Shane Mosley went 12 rounds with Larios. And then Floyd Mayweather goes in there and Floyd Mayweather blows out Oscar Larios. But guess what? In return, Floyd Mayweather, he never fights Juan Manuel Marquez, Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, right? But he can say that he annihilated an opponent that they could not annihilate. Do you think if Floyd Mayweather retired like that, once again, not fighting the Manny Pacquiaos, the Juan Manuel Marquezes, you can even throw some extra names in there, the Shane Mosleys, the Canelo Alvarezes, do you really think there would be any writers titling their articles, "What else does Floyd Mayweather have to prove?" Floyd doesn't have to prove anything else after that performance over Oscar Larios. You think anyone would be saying that? Certainly not when you're on the coincidental list. I mean, if Gennady Golovkin has nothing else to prove, where were the articles for Andre Ward after he won the Super Six? Why were there no articles saying, what else does Andre Ward have to prove? Hell, if that's the case, if you look at Gennady Golovkin's resume, you can say the same thing after Floyd Mayweather beat Gennaro Hernandez. Let's imagine once again, put Floyd Mayweather in the same predicament that Gennady Golovkin is in right now. Imagine if Floyd Mayweather had a career similar to Gennady Golovkin's career. Imagine if Floyd Mayweather never moved up 5 weight classes. He stayed at 130. And let's just imagine the best competition on his resume was against Gennaro Hernandez, Angel Manfredi, and only the first Castillo fight, not even the rematch. Imagine if those were the biggest names on Floyd Mayweather's resume, on his record, right? Now keep in mind, when Floyd Mayweather fought against Gennaro Hernandez, Floyd was an underdog in that fight, okay? He was an underdog in that fight, only had 17 fights, fought for the title. Hernandez was a lineal champion. He was pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. Floyd Mayweather annihilated him, right? Now, once again, imagine if Floyd Mayweather retired with that record. His biggest wins were against Gennaro Hernandez, Castillo, Angel Manfredi, and let's just throw in a couple of the smaller names, Philip Endo, right? Let's just say he beat all these guys at 130. Let's go ahead and redact the Corraleses, the Manny Pacquiaos, the Shane Mosleys, the Ricky Hattons, Zab Judas, and all of those guys, and say the only fighters he beat are the ones that I just named right now. Keep in mind, the Castillo fight is the same first Castillo fight that we all know about. The one that was controversial where, a lot of people said that they thought Castillo won the fight. Imagine Floyd Mayweather never giving Castillo a rematch, and he just walks away with that first win he got over Castillo. He retires this way. Do you guys think any writers, including the one who wrote this article today, do you think any writers would be writing articles saying, what else does Floyd Mayweather have to prove? Do you think any writers will be comparing Floyd Mayweather to LeBron James, Michael Jordan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? We know the answer to that. That's a rhetorical question. And this right here exposes the racial double standards that exist in the sport of boxing, right? I mean, sometimes when I read these articles, like the one that I read today, it reminds me of some 1960s type of sports documentary type movie, where you watch the movie and you clearly see the racial double standards that the black athletes had to deal with at the time. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy because it's so in your face. The double standards are so obvious. Now, it wouldn't be that bad of a thing for this writer to say if all fighters got that same type of treatment, right? I mean, because once again, if you're going to sit over here and say, what else does Golovkin have to prove? Once again, with the close decision win he had over Danny Jacobs. By way of contrast, that's why I said, imagine if Floyd Mayweather, if he only fought Castillo once and never came back and avenged that controversial decision. How do you think that would be perceived? Well, this is exactly what Golovkin just did. Golovkin did the exact same situation. He did the exact same thing. Well, actually, I shouldn't say he did the same thing. He did the same thing as the scenario that I presented to you, which is if Floyd would have fought Castillo just once and not gave Castillo a rematch. Okay? Golovkin did not give Danny Jacobs a rematch, but yet this writer is saying, what else does he have to prove? What else does he have to prove? Okay? Roberto Duran, he beat Sugar Ray Leonard in a very, very close decision that could have went either way. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people, you just read up, you watch the highlights, and you read the stories on Duran beating Sugar Ray Leonard, but that fight was extremely close and could have went either way. Roberto Duran gave Sugar Ray Leonard a rematch, and Sugar Ray Leonard, he beat Roberto Duran in the rematch. This is what the greats do. This is what the greats do. They don't leave you wondering what would have happened in a rematch since the first fight was controversial or it was so close. When a fighter believes that he is truly the best, he says, you know what? Let me go ahead and right this wrong. Let me show people that this guy is not on my level and I can beat him more decisive in a rematch. This is what they usually do. But see, Golovkin is comfortable with fighting Canelo in a rematch because he feels he has a better chance of beating Canelo. And even if he didn't beat Canelo, he'd come back for another payday and he'll just keep fighting Canelo over and over and over again if they will allow it to go down. But he's not going to do that with Danny Jacobs because the risk is too high. Because he feels that Danny Jacobs is a far better fighter and more dangerous than a Canelo Alvarez. And this is why Golovkin will never fight Charlo. And the funny thing is, everything that I'm saying to you guys, even the writers and the fans that are defending Golovkin, they are agreeing with me. They all agree with me that they believe deep down Charlo will most likely beat Gennady Golovkin. Andre will most likely beat Gennady Golovkin. Sergey Derevyevchenko has a good chance of beating him. I haven't watched a lot of his fights. I just know that Golovkin personally knows him because they came up together in the Olympics, in the amateur rankings. Golovkin knows him very well. Sergey was a very good fighter as an amateur. This is what Lou DiBella was telling me, Sergey's promoter. And keep in mind, guys, going into that fight, no one gave Danny Jacobs a chance because Danny had already been knocked out before. Matter of fact, going into that fight, I remember tons of the most loyal Gennady Golovkin fans, they kept saying over and over and over again, Danny Jacobs has no chance. He has no chin, and he's gotten knocked out before. Golovkin is going to knock him out in the first couple rounds. This is why Danny Jacobs was such a heavy underdog going into that fight. It's funny how all of a sudden, an opponent who was supposed to be an easy opponent, now all of a sudden, fans are forced to retract and give Danny Jacobs credit. They have to give Danny Jacobs credit so that they can give Golovkin more credit, right? So now he's not a bum who has no chin. He went from that fighter who has no chin that's going to easily get knocked out to now being Gennady Golovkin's toughest fight, right? But once again, by way of contrast, when you look at Floyd Mayweather's toughest fights, when you look at Sugar Ray Leonard's toughest fights, Roberto Duran's toughest fights, they came back and gave those fighters a rematch, right? And when it comes to Sugar Ray Leonard, when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, when it comes to Kovalev giving his toughest opponents a rematch, they left no doubt that they were the better fighter and beat them decisively in a rematch. So once again, when this writer, when he says, what else does Golovkin have to prove? He has nothing else to prove. That statement would not have sounded that bad if he and other writers would have said the exact same thing about all the other fighters. I mean, if that's the criteria, if that's all you have to do is duplicate a resume like Gennady Golovkin's, then once again, writers should be asking this question about tons of fighters. Even after Floyd Mayweather moved up 5 weight classes, writers were still demanding that Floyd do more. If you really think about it, even without Floyd Mayweather fighting Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather's resume still trumps Golovkin's by a margin, right? It's not even close. I mean, I can name tons of fighters that Floyd Mayweather beat that I don't even know if Golovkin could have beat in the same natural weight class. We know for a fact when it comes to Gennady Golovkin's opponents, Floyd Mayweather would have beat them all. He would have beat them all. Years old, you still have fans and writers inquiring about a Floyd versus Gennady Golovkin fight. That's when Floyd was close to 40 years old. When Floyd Mayweather was 40 years old and he fought Andre Berto, you have fans saying he should have fought Thurman. He should have fought Errol Spence. He should have fought Terrence Crawford, right? This was at age 40. You see how the standards are set so much higher when you're on the coincidental list? I mean, you got to be fighting the best competition at age 40 when you're on the coincidental list. But when you're on the hope list, you could be 35. You could be 34. And they'll be saying, oh, he's too old. He doesn't have to. What does he have to prove? Something else the writer said, he said that Gennady Golovkin has already dealt with adversity and everything, so therefore he has nothing to prove. Well, the thing is, when Golovkin dealt with adversity, the fight ended up in a controversial decision, right? He fought against Canelo Alvarez. The fight was a draw. He fought against Danny Jacobs. Many people thought that Danny Jacobs won the fight. So what does that mean when you say he dealt with adversity? You're supposed to deal with adversity and persevere. You're not supposed to deal with adversity and lose the fight or have people believing you lost the fight. You're supposed to still win and leave no doubt that you won the fight when you deal with adversity, right? All Golovkin did when he fought against Danny Jacobs is made us believe that he probably would not beat Danny Jacobs in a rematch or anyone on that level. That's not what you call dealing with adversity. I mean, you can honestly say it's the contrary. It showed us that Golovkin has a very difficult time dealing with adversity, stepping up in competition. I mean, just look at the dichotomy for a second, guys. Look at how great Golovkin looks when he's in the ring with a Dominic Wade, when he's in the ring with a Willie Monroe, with a Marco Antonio Rubio, with a Macklin. And this is how you know that the age excuse does not apply when it comes to Gennady Golovkin. Because this is the exact same Golovkin we seen against Vanes Martirosyan, against Adama, against Marco Antonio Rubio, Willie Monroe, and the list goes on and on and on. This is how a lot of Golovkin fights, they start and they end when he fights C-level opposition. They'll hit Golovkin with a couple shots, and then Golovkin will land his shots and it'll be over. But then when he steps up in competition and he fights against an A-level or a B-level fighter, then all of a sudden he doesn't look the same. And the fight ends like the Danny Jacobs fight ended or the Canelo Alvarez fight ended. I mean, I'll take it further. Even the Kell Brook fight, you can clearly tell that if Kell Brook was the same natural weight as Gennady Golovkin, let's say if they were both natural welterweights, or if they were both natural middleweights, Kell Brook would have beat Gennady Golovkin. Not only would Kell Brook have beaten Gennady Golovkin, but I think he probably would have stopped him. I mean, you guys have to remember how good Kell Brook looked in the Errol Spence fight. Kell Brook put on his best performance, I would say, in that Errol Spence fight. So just imagine if he did not have to deal with the weight disadvantage going into that fight. Even Golovkin himself said that Kell Brook was just way too small. That's what Golovkin said, guys. Okay? So there's no doubt about it that when you're stepping up in competition, things are going to be more challenging. But if you are a great fighter, it's up to you to figure out how to beat that fighter more decisively. Or just beat him decisively, period, with no question of who won the fight. Okay? Because once again, when Floyd Mayweather, when he fought against Castillo, when he fought against Shane Mosley, hurting him real bad in that second round, when he fought against Manny Pacquiao, who was not an easy opponent, when he fought against the much bigger, much younger Canelo Alvarez, when he fought against the unorthodox Maidana, who was 20 pounds bigger than him, he had to find ways to win the fight. And in all of those fights, Floyd Mayweather, even if it took a rematch, he left no doubt that he won the fight. Gennady Golovkin's two biggest fights, I can't even say his two biggest wins, his two biggest fights on his record is against Danny Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez. And he already has to do over the Canelo fight. It does not make sense that he would not give Danny Jacobs a rematch when now Danny Jacobs is the #1 contender. He's his mandatory. So what is Golovkin going to do? Is Golovkin going to do what Floyd Mayweather did against Castillo and Maidana? Or is Golovkin just going to vacate and give up the belt rather than fight him? Because see, this is what the boxing world wants Golovkin to do. They are once again encouraging Gennady Golovkin to retire because they prefer to see Golovkin fight lower level opposition like Vanes Martirosyan and stay undefeated, as opposed to challenging himself and going to the playoffs, to the finals. They don't want to see him lose. They are willing to protect this man by all means necessary. And that is how good it is to be on the hope list. That's how good it is to have your hope insurance. I mean, think about this for a second, guys. How often have you ever heard me say a fighter should not fight the best competition, a fighter in his prime? How often have you heard me say this about Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, or someone like that? We're talking about fighters in their prime. We're not talking about fighters close to 40 years old like Floyd Mayweather was. We're talking about fighters in their prime. While you have fighters like Errol Spence willing to fight all of the best fighters, Terrence Crawford, Deontay Wilder, Andre Ward, the Charlo brothers, and this is just to name a few. While you have all of these fighters that stay willing to fight the best fighters in the sport, you have Gennady Golovkin that is being encouraged by the boxing world to avoid playoffs, the finals, by all means necessary. So to compare Golovkin to LeBron James, you must be out of your damn mind. And this is why you won't hear too many professional boxers or trainers comparing Golovkin to LeBron James or Michael Jordan, etc., etc., etc. See, this is the difference between speaking the truth and speaking with emotion. You have a lot of fans and especially decafs in the media, they just are fans. They're just fans trying to protect this man's O, trying to protect Gennady Golovkin's O. But the only people that you will hear saying this type of stuff, comparing Golovkin to LeBron James, are once again emotionally attached fans. The difference from them and me is the things that you hear me say, the professional boxing community, they corroborate everything that I say. At least 95% of the professional boxers, trainers, managers, promoters, etc., etc. Even some that have an extreme agenda, right? They still agree with my assessment when it comes to what is considered the Michael Jordan or the LeBron James of the sport. I'll give you a prime example. Nacho Beristain, one of the best trainers, certainly goes down as probably top 2, top 3, one of the best trainers from Mexico. Now, Nacho Beristain, who trains Juan Manuel Marquez, he said that Floyd Mayweather is the Michael Jordan of the sport. He is simply the best. And this was during and after Floyd Mayweather beat his fighter. When I say during, I mean leading up to the fight. This man, Nacho, he was in so much awe of Floyd Mayweather that he was praising Floyd Mayweather's skill and ability leading up to the fight. For you to go up against a fighter and then after the fact say that man right there is simply the best. He is the Michael Jordan of the sport. That's like Muhammad Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, saying that Joe Frazier is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Do you guys see how much of a compliment that is to Floyd Mayweather? This is my point. You hear trainers say these things about Floyd Mayweather. Why are we not hearing multiple trainers say these things about Gennady Golovkin? Because when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, Joel Diaz, Tim Bradley's former trainer, he said that the man is simply, he praised him to death. He said he's simply the best. You know, talked about him like he was Michael Jordan. Canelo Alvarez's trainer praised Floyd Mayweather. Mikey Garcia, he said that Floyd Mayweather was his favorite fighter. Mikey Garcia's father and trainer, he said that Floyd Mayweather is the greatest fighter of all time. Oscar De La Hoya said that Floyd Mayweather was the greatest fighter of all time. He said it could be argued. Once again, I just said before, that's like Angelo Dundee saying that Joe Frazier is the greatest heavyweight. Well, Oscar De La Hoya was in the ring with Floyd, so that's more like Muhammad Ali himself saying that Joe Frazier is the greatest fighter of all time, right? Well, the only people you hear talking about Gennady Golovkin like he's a Floyd Mayweather are fans on the internet and writers who have an emotionally attached agenda. Those are the only people you hear saying these things. Once again, the things that you guys hear me say is backed up and confirmed and corroborated by professional boxers and trainers that do this for a living. And they don't have some personal political agenda. So at the end of the day, some of these fighters on the hope list, they may not be the best fighters in the world, but the best weapon they do have is that hope insurance. That's right, because some of the main people in the media, they will do whatever it takes to try to protect them from stepping up in competition. You go all the way back to Guillermo Rigo. The media, HBO's Larry Merchant and Jim Lampley, they kept saying they did not want to see Rigo fight against Nonito Donaire, right? Leo Santa Cruz. You had a lot of people saying they didn't want to see Leo Santa Cruz against Rigo. They didn't want Golovkin to fight against Andre Ward. They didn't want Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez to fight against Rigo. They don't want Golovkin to fight against Charlo, against Andre. They don't want him to lose to someone on the coincidental list, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. But you have never heard, once again, me saying, I don't want to see Mayweather against Pacquiao. I don't want to see Ward against Kovalev. I don't want to see Keith Thurman against Errol Spence. And the list goes on and on and on. We want to see all of these fights. That is the difference from us. And once again, you cannot use the age excuse, because even when Gennady Golovkin was knocking out Marco Antonio Rubio, these writers and fans, they still didn't want to see Andre Ward fight against Golovkin or Golovkin fight Andre Ward. How are you going to protect Golovkin from Andre Ward, praying that he never fights Andre Ward, but then when tough competition is in his division, then say, what does he have to prove? He doesn't have to fight any of these guys. And even if he loses to them, hypothetically, we can still use the excuse he's too old. Golovkin, who's never been in any wars, 36 years old, is old when Floyd Mayweather was asked to fight Golovkin at age 38, 39. We know what time it is at the end of the day. So I could go on for a whole nother hour breaking this down, but I'm gonna go ahead and end this video right now. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. That's all I got for this one, guys. I'm on to the next one. What's going on, y'all? Brooklyn, New York. It's going down. We out here for the Wilder versus Ortiz fight. It should be a great fight. Once again, I'm loving it out here in Brooklyn, New York, from Las Vegas, Long Beach to Brooklyn. This is how we do it. On to the next one, y'all.
Yo, this is Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation, baby.